Right. Well, good morning, good evening, as the case may be. And before I introduce our esteemed guest here, Sunny Aggarwal, let me first give a quick shout out to our sponsors. OmniFlix Media Network, which is launching the Flix2 testnet, their first testnet with NFTs on it. After the success of Flix1, which was, I think, the largest Tendermint network ever, Sunny, correct me if I'm wrong on that, with around 750 nodes, which is extremely impressive. Yeah. They're going to be following that up with Flix2. Very exciting. Please go check out blog.omniflix.network for more information there. And also, I would be remiss if I did not mention Sommelier Finance. Here at Sommelier Finance, we're going to be launching, we are the easiest way to add liquidity to Uniswap V3, and we're going to be launching our mainnet Cosmos chain here this week. Very exciting. So please stay tuned for a lot more announcements there as we get up to launching the sellers, which are going to be sort of managed by the Sommelier chain. So very exciting there. And today we have Sunny Aggarwal, none other than from Osmosis. So Sunny, just do you mind giving the folks a quick introduction and introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hey guys, my name is Sunny. I've been working in the Cosmos ecosystem for close to 4 years now. I spent a while at Tendermint doing a lot of just core development stuff mostly on the Cosmos SDK and just research and proof of stake and things like that. Helped launch the Cosmos Hub, and then I left the Tendermint company basically about a year ago, and started just exploring different things. Was watching DeFi summer happening on Ethereum, and we're like, how do we bring that to Cosmos? And so that's sort of how one of the things that inspired Osmosis. We're like, all right, let's just go. We've been talking about DeFi on Cosmos for a while. Let's just go start building it.
I mean, that would be the great organizational restructuring. So, I think, Sunny, you and I met back in Berkeley back in 2018, right when I started, but you had already been working on Cosmos for a while. And one of the coolest things about working on Cosmos at Berkeley was all the blockchain at Berkeley folks. You are one of a number of them. I think Federico, and was Marco there too? Or
not Marco, but Dave.
Not Marco.
And, Dave. Aditya and Colin.
Joshua, or no, Jeremiah.
Jeremiah, yeah.
Yeah, quite a few Cosmos folks came out of blockchain at Berkeley, which is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was cool. I mean, that office that we had was really nice because it was right next to the Berkeley campus, and it sort of became a sort of hangout spot for blockchain at Berkeley people, and then we were able to slowly pick at them as when they would come by.
Oh yeah, you used to do white paper reading sessions there on Thursdays.
Yep.
What were some of your favorite white papers you did during that time? Do you remember any of them? That was when Avalanche white paper was coming out and stuff like that. Yeah,
I mean, so I would try to get everyone to read the Tendermint white paper and stuff, and spend a lot of time trying to explain Tendermint to everyone. A lot of Web of Trust stuff that I always found really interesting. That's always been one of my passions. Dave would try to teach people about privacy and snarks and stuff. Yeah, I mean, we had so many of those that it's it was probably a great learning experience for everyone.
They were really cool. I only sat in on one of those, but it was I just remember it being a cool crew. And that's where you and Dave founded Sikka, which is one of the largest validators in Cosmos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we were as the testnets were coming. I think for all of us, we were like, all right, we're building proof of stake. We got to dog food our own tech, and it's hard to build stuff and not know what the validators are doing. And so the best way to do it was just start running something on the test nets and stuff. And then when mainnet came around, all right, let's just keep running these.
I remember everyone at Tendermint was running validators because of this exact thing, and everyone was doing it slightly differently, and no one ever really wanted to fully disclose their setup. They were all just I'm running over here and I'm doing this, and I remember you guys were running at the UC data center. Are you guys still in the Berkeley data center?
Yep, we are.
Sunny, that's a good deal there. Nice. Well, so the first kind of topic I wanted to talk about was kind of the history of DEXs in Cosmos. And I think you were probably the first person to tell me this, but Jay actually invented Tendermint because he lost money in the Mt. Gox hack and wanted to build a decentralized exchange. And when I started there, like we didn't even have the hub launch, nothing was really going on. And you were already building DEX prototypes at that point, I think, right?
Or at least designing some. But yeah. He wanted to create one called Fort Knox because there's going to be a more secure version of Mt. Gox.
That name still could be used. That would be a fantastic DEX name. It's a good branding there.
So I mean, he was like, he was really worried about this idea of like chains being like double spending on an exchange, and so that sort of was one of the original impetuses for like figuring out how to create a safety favoring protocol, which eventually led to the creation of Tendermint.
Yeah, very like kind of wild that DEXs have ended up becoming this huge application, and that was like why we created it. So, you worked on that. You worked on a couple of prototypes throughout your time there. And, during that sort of gore period, we all kind of went our separate ways. And I think you fell in kind of working with the Chainapsis team, which I will say a great choice because they do the best front end in the ecosystem. And you guys started working on Osmosis. And I think you told me it was at a hackathon that you guys kind of started with that, right?
So I wasn't. So like, talk about like the history of how Osmosis started, and if you want to talk about the history of DEXs at Tendermint, we can also talk about that.
I mean, it's fun, but the history of how Osmosis started is definitely way more fun.
Cool.
So yeah.
I mean, so for Osmosis, what happened was after we left, I was doing like random stuff for a little bit, trying to I like some education stuff and whatnot, but then eventually it's like,
you were working. Speaking of Web of Trust, you were also like working on a Web of Trust paper for a little while too, which I was really excited about because like I worked at Blockstack and like I'd love this internet identity stuff and like would have loved to have seen a Web of Trust implementation.
Yeah, I think the Web of Trust stuff is like one day I want to get back to it. If I wasn't working on Osmosis, that's what I'd be working on right now. But so I was exploring different things, and then Dave and I were like, all right, let's like start building something. And we were like, all right, let's focus on like privacy. And I think that's like sort of the main thing that we want to do. And then different types of privacy, like fully on-chain privacy. The one that kind of really stuck with when we talked to people is this idea that we had called mempool privacy, because what that would do is that would solve front running. And because if you can't read anything that's in the mempool, then no one can front run. And so we started building out a solution for this called threshold encryption. And we spent like most of our fall basically like designing that mechanism, because there was like, it sounds somewhat simple actually, but it turns out there's like edge cases and stuff you have to solve for. So we were busy doing that. And
those nasty edge cases.
Oh yeah. And as we go forward, we're probably going to find more and more, but and so we were like very deep in that side, and just like, and while we were building it, we were very aware that, hey, this is a feature, not a product yet. And it's like, but we were like, all right, we're developing it. We're like, all right, we'll figure out what the feature is here. It's going to be, are we going to go build a like Tendermint based rollups for Ethereum? Are we going to go build some sort of like something more like lazy ledger where it's like, or now Celestia, where it's like, oh, it will do censorship resistance for other chains. So we're like trying to figure out what the product would be. Or do we go launch our own DEX? And then meanwhile, off on literally the other side of the world in Korea, Tony, who is one of the co-founders of Chainapsis, at the Cosmos Hackathon, I think in November, he built this thing called, he built the MVP of Osmosis, where him and a couple other folks built like this MVP. They basically re-implemented the balancer white paper onto the Cosmos SDK, and I believe they won that hackathon. And so then they Josh and Tony then like sort of reached out to us and were like, hey, how do we like, would you guys be interested in helping us on this? I think we have like this MVP, but I think, having you have combining forces, we can really like, take this, like make this the next thing in Cosmos. And so we're like, oh, this is amazing, because this is going to be the way to ship. This is the go-to-market for our threshold encryption work. So we eventually, it started off more, we were just sort of helping the Chain Apps team work on it, and then eventually it just got more and more involved to the point that we basically like merged teams and like our and so this all happened in like December or January, and then yeah, we were working on it, building out the like main Osmosis code base. It doesn't have any of that threshold encryption stuff yet because there's all sorts of things we have to do in parallel with that ABCI++ and improvements to Tendermint and stuff to make that world work. But so we're like, all right, let's bring some DEX to market, and then once we there's a need for like solving liquidity in Cosmos right now, and so we're like, all right.
I mean, Sunny, you solved that. Like that's
I think there's still a long way to go. Like I tried to walk my mom how to buy like Osmo the other day, and it was like crypto UX is just so much like not even on the Osmosis side alone. Even like Coinbase is hard for like. And it's like,
well, I think part of that is because it's hard for people to understand private keys. By the way, my mom claimed her airdrop and has already done swaps and provided liquidity on Osmosis. She loves it.
Nice, awesome. But yeah, so now we have this like base platform, and the idea is to keep building more things on top of it, more DeFi primitives, more privacy stuff, more more security, also as like a base ground to start building out IBC UX stuff, all sorts of cool things.
One of the things that, as you're sort of talking about that and how Osmosis is really going to be a go-to-market for threshold encryption and some of this more advanced cryptography and some of these really cool sort of next generation ideas, I think the path that you're taking is very much the Cosmos path, the way that I understand it, where you sort of like ship, you get a product out. It might not have any of the features that you really want, but you have to build that base. You have to build the engineering skill. You have to build the business. You have to build the relationships with other folks in the industry to kind of walk before you can run. And instead of kind of going out to VCs and raising that money, you did it on chain, which is like very, very crypto native. And, another one of your blockchain at Berkeley folks, Chris Goes, is kind of taking a different approach, but also similar ideas with Amora in sort of shipping encryption. But he's going for more of a, go raise the money, be in stealth for a while, kind of like work slowly and like ship a complete platform. And,
we're actually working with them a lot on the cryptography side. So we're like the threshold encryption stuff that we're doing, we're actually like working on the same line, building it together.
I mean, that's awesome. And they do incredible work, but I just think it's very interesting that these two strategies are like, they keep cropping up again and again. And anyway, I'm very partial to the ship and iterate strategy. So like, I always like seeing people take that. And that's one of the things I've always really admired about Osmosis.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, it does make like development a little bit harder because it's like, all right, now you want to, not what
makes it way harder.
Like, all right, now we're dealing with like public market things at the same time as like trying to deliver, like build the next things as well. So definitely, but it at the same time, it's definitely way more motivating to be building once you have like something out of the market because you're like, oh wow, users act. I will say my like, I just became much more excited about it as well. Like like after we launched, it's like, oh wow, like users want to use this and like
I mean, you guys built. You're talking about user experience and how terrible crypto UX is. You guys have built something that has better UX than most things out there in crypto. And from the ground up, the Chain Apps team with Kepler, the Tendermint team and the Cosmos team, all the work we've done over the year to make these 5-second transactions and instant finality a real thing. And then, just the ease of use on the DEX as well. Like those are like, all of that comes together to make one of the easiest to use decentralized exchange experiences ever. And like, also the steps you guys have made on IBC UX, which is a topic I kind of want to cover a little bit later in the call. Like those are huge and it makes a massive difference for end users.
I mean, it helps a lot that IBC protocol makes it a lot easier. We're like, I think a lot of the issue on like other people building bridge UXs is it's like, oh, you got to deal with like reorgs and like what happens if it messes up. It's like IBC handles 90% of the work for us. We just have to like build the buttons to do it. And like one of my best friends, Zubin, like he's like, I've been trying to convince him on like Cosmos for like many years. And I've just he's never gotten it. And then he like tried using like the IBC transfer from like Atoms to Osmosis. And he was like, oh, I
I
get
get
it
it
now.
now.
Yeah, he's like,
Yeah.
holy shit, that would be nerve-wracking if there was like a potential for a reorg right there. Now I see why you
Yeah.
would do safety over liveness.
Yeah, and you know, I also like you go in some of these repos for some of these other bridges, whether they're centralized or another like client bridge in the style of IBC, and they're like, okay, we've got all these different denominations, and like we might have multiple instances of this chain, and like it's like, okay, we've been thinking about these problems for years at this point. Like we have working systems that exhibit them. Like it's just interesting seeing other ecosystems kind of run into some of the same stuff that we have. Um, but yeah, so you guys launched Osmosis, a lot of exciting features. We're going to see UST liquidity coming to Osmosis very soon, which is, I think, a huge traction point and an inflection point in IBC adoption towards the end of this year. A couple of major chains between Thorchain and Terra coming online. But what do you guys have on the roadmap coming up? We talked a little bit about threshold encryption, but sort of where is that and where does that fit into the broader roadmap?
Yeah. So I guess basically what we're doing right now is like we have three main sort of pillars or like feature sets that we're working on in parallel. So one is that like privacy stuff. So that would include threshold encryption. Eventually, after we finish threshold encryption, we're going to work on more like on-chain privacy stuff as well. So you can't like link people's trades together. But right now, a lot of that work right now is focused on like getting ABCI++ up and going. So ABCI++ was this like protocol that our team helped like architect and like push in within Tendermint, which is Tendermint is like this great consensus protocol right now, but it's not very extensible. You can't like, right now what we have is we have the like Cosmos SDK where you can write like application layer stuff in your state machine. And then you have Tendermint, which takes that state machine and makes it a blockchain. But sometimes, and that worked for like the first generation of Cosmos chains, I guess.
Yeah.
But now, as we go forward, the state machine and consensus protocol actually need to start being more intertwined. So, because for example, threshold encryption is something where it's like, oh, it's a state machine level thing because it needs to know how to do a lot of this encryption and stuff, but then it has to talk to the mempool, and because there's all sorts of things that sort of do this. Like, you want to start doing like validator provided price oracle. And at the last,
I mean, the Gravity Bridge itself, being able to register Ethereum keys and have that multi-sig signing thing happen in the consensus protocol would be critical. There's just, I think that the number of applications are kind of limitless.
Yeah. Once you have access to the, part of the pitch of Tendermint has always been you can make your validators do more, right? Like more than just consensus. You can ask them to do other things. And so this ABCI++ is sort of the way that it's the mechanism of how you ask your validators to do more things.
The way that I've heard this described, you're describing it pretty well, but I've heard it described as like right now in Tendermint, there's only hooks into like three parts of the consensus process. You've got begin block, deliver TX, and end block. And those are like the only callbacks and hooks you have. You want hooks at the propose step. You want hooks at the pre-vote step. You want hooks at the vote step. You want hooks at the, the finalization step. You need hooks into all those various pieces of the consensus machinery in order to really take full advantage of the consensus protocol. And what ABCI++ does is it's ABCI, the three existing callbacks, plus a few more that we didn't have.
Yep, exactly. That's more technical explanation, but yeah, that's exactly what it does. So that's all. That all goes in our privacy stuff. Then the second thing that we're working on is staking related stuff. So that's specifically one feature that we have called superfluid staking. And so superfluid staking is this different model of staking derivatives. So, I'm sure everyone's hopefully familiar by staking derivatives at this point. It's been an idea that's been floating around.
Assume this show is familiar with staking derivatives. Yeah, cool. Fair enough.
So I've always been a little bit concerned about staking derivatives in the sense that it's like, I help design a lot of like staking derivative stuff, but it's in the back of my head, it's always like, we're just undermining proof of stake, aren't we? We're just like undoing proof of stake, undoing the bond.
It's always kind of felt that way. Yeah.
Yeah. So then like about, we had this idea of like, hey, what if there's a way of like getting a lot of the benefits of staking derivatives without the security risk. And so what we're doing there is, so what are staking derivatives? Staking derivatives are this idea that you take staking tokens, you stake them, you get back a staking derivative token, and then you go do stuff with that staking derivative token. So our thought was, hey, what if we do this in the reverse direction? What if we take staking tokens, use them in DeFi, get back the DeFi asset, and then go stake the DeFi assets? So as an example, what we're planning with Osmosis is, let's say you have Osmo and you want to LP using Osmo. So let's say you have Osmo AKT. Now you put that into LP, into a liquidity pool, you get back an LP share. But this underlying this LP share is some Osmo.
The actual assets.
And so what if we can go stake the LP share itself? And because it's an application specific blockchain, we can tell the staking protocol, like, hey, treat these LP shares as their underlying Osmo value. And so that way now you can have Osmo both LPing and staking at the same time, but they're still staked, right? The LP shares are staked, they're bonded, they still have to go through unbonding. And so you still get you don't undermine the proof of stake security in the same way, but you still get a lot of that benefit.
That's actually really interesting. I had not heard this described yet. A few just first thoughts on this is one of the interesting staking derivatives that I've heard of is sort of securitizing the staking cash flows, which is very different from this approach. And then, so if we put the Osmo into the liquidity pool and then stake the LP tokens, did those count as staked both for the liquidity pool staking and the rewards, as well as for the staking rewards? Cool.
So
nice.
Earning both liquidity rewards and staking rewards. And we can imagine how this could work for other DeFi assets as well. So imagine we had like some sort of lending protocol, like let's say Compound.
Umi.
Let's say, Umi. And then let's say you deposit Osmo and you get back UOsmo. Oh, yeah, that's confusing a little bit. Umi Osmo, because and so then you can take that Umi Osmo and you can stake that as well, right? Like
that makes sense. As long as there's Osmo in the thing, there's going to be some pro rata portion
way for the protocol to like calculate the underlying Osmo value. That, and then we have like ideas of how, and then we have like we have superfluid V2, which is called interfluid staking, which is how do you, so the idea there is, so I go back to the LP pool example. We said we have this Osmo AKT LP share, and then we staked on Osmosis. So we're getting all the Osmo value in that, or whatever that stake value, we're getting the Osmo value counting as security. But what about all the AKT over here? What if there's a way of this is like superfluid as a service, where it's like, what if there's a way of us letting the Akash network chain know, like, hey, by the way, you guys have a bunch of AKT that's sitting on Osmosis that's staked over here. These people would like to, do you want to let them like choose a validator there? And if they,
it's staked, it's not going to be able to be used in a long range attack, like counts towards security of the network. Might as well incentivize these people to do this activity as well, because not only does it buoy the token price, it also keeps tokens off the market. It ensures that there's fewer attack vectors. Like, it makes a shitload of sense.
So it's like any chain can then use Osmosis to do superfluid staking. And so it's a type of interchain staking. It's different than shared security, because shared security would be saying like, oh, Osmo or like should be used as security. It's not what we're doing. We're saying like, hey, other chains, you have your own token that's sitting on Osmosis. Just let they stake your token on Osmosis secure your chain as well.
And, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think that the whole proof of stake security model, the reason why we stake is to prevent these long range attacks and to ensure that these tokens are at least locked up for some period of time so that we can have some sort of assurances in the stake machine, in the state machine. But, you can get these same assurances by staking them in all these other protocols. So like, this makes a lot of sense. Very interesting. So you were talking about the 3 pillars of the roadmap. We've got privacy, we've got superfluid staking. And what's the last one?
Third one is just this more general, broad DeFi innovation, which is like a very broad term, but it just means like, improving AMMs. And, we're working on a lot of things on like concentrated liquidity, but like not the Uniswap V3 approach. We want a more sort of passive approach where like the algorithm should be like, I kind of like what Curve V2 is doing, and it's like some slight modifications where it's a more passive model of concentrated liquidity, figuring out how to do like different types of AMM specialized for different types of financial assets. Like, if you have derivatives and stuff, how do you design an AMM that's like, like AMMs as designed today don't work for options, right? Because like if those expire out of the money, you have infinite impermanence loss. So how do you create an AMM for options? How do you create an AMM for perps? How do you create an AMM for like all these different things? And so that's just sort of that one's a little bit more, and then also like, batching designs and things like this. So these are all just like this like more research laundry list of things of like I'm just bucketing under DeFi innovation.
And one area, speaking of innovation, that I'm not hearing on this roadmap that I know you're going to continue to innovate on is IBC user experience. And this is sort of a passion you and I really share. Like, are you guys going to kind of continue to try to push the boundaries on IBC user experience and do your best to kind of make seamless experiences there? We've talked about a few things.
Yeah. So those three are, I would call like our chain roadmap kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. Then the IBC user experience is just sort of this more broader thing that we're focused on. Part of our goal here is like, or, I had a tweet like 2 or 3 days ago where I was like, everyone else is starting to think about interchain communication right now. Like you have the chain link thing, you have wormhole. It's like, no, we've been building interchain communication for 2 years. We've already shipped.
We done did it.
Yeah.
We done
now
did
we're
it.
thinking about interchain composability, right? Like, and like, how do you take applications on different chains and make the UX seamless? Like, the goal right now is to prove to the world. I think a lot of people are still skeptical that like interchain UX will be as good as single chain UX. And so that's like our goal right now, is to show everyone that like, no, look, the UX of using the interchain will be as good as like the UX.
I think it's
or potentially better.
I think it's not only potentially going to be better. I think it's necessarily going to be better. When you talk about proof of work chains and reorgs and stuff, like we're going to kiss all that goodbye, and we're going to go into this world where you'll be able to either see your asset travel across chains if you want to, or you'll just be able to say, great, I'm using this machinery. I don't necessarily know how any of it works, in the same way that we're using a handful of servers to communicate between us right in this moment. And proxy chains is, I think, a really interesting thing that's going to get built out, fee models for proxy chains. I think there's chain naming service is another one.
Chain naming service. I think interchain accounts is a big piece. I think so we're working on one thing called like BEC32 forwarding, which is like all the Cosmos chains use this like BEC32 address format. And it's funny because what we're actually what I'm trying to do is like hack this BEC32 system, where BEC32 was really meant to be this like client side thing where it's like
human readable, HRP.
Readable, just for the clients to be able to more easily display addresses. But I'm trying to push it into a world where it's like, hey, everyone's already using this thing. What if we make the chains aware of these BEC32 address formats and like use that as a way of improving the UX, where because like if you go on the Cosmos Hub, your address looks like Cosmo1 blah 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 blah. If you're on Osmosis, it's like Osmo1 blah 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 blah. On Sommelier, it'll be Som1 blah 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 blah. And so on the Cosmos Hub, I should be able to make an address saying like send token to Osmo1 blah blah blah, and it should automatically do the IBC stuff in the back end. Like we don't have to users don't have to know how to create IBC transactions, or even like integrators don't have to learn how to create IBC transactions. Like it'll be nice if on Coinbase, when I want to withdraw atoms, if I'm able to put an Osmosis address in there, Coinbase just automatically just sends you to the Cosmos chain, and the Cosmos Hub chain knows like, oh, okay, this is intended to go to the Osmosis chain, so let's go ahead and send it there.
Yeah, I think there's a number of features like this. Like you guys have asset lists over on Osmosis. Chain naming service is sort of this idea of like DNS for the blockchain. And, I would say another idea that fits in strongly here as well is the web of trust idea, how to connect addresses from different chains with one coherent identity. The Cosmos ecosystem is ahead of pretty much everyone else in sort of getting to these problems first and then starting to solve them. So it will be interesting to see if we can kind of maintain our lead there. Cool. So I think at this point, this is when we normally do some audience questions. So let's see if we've got any here. There's a few folks here. There's a question about Osmosis stake rewards. Let's not do that one. So Pavan asks, firstly, Osmosis has smooth and sexy UI. Could you explain more about the future roadmap, specifically new tools in IBC? I think we just went over that, Pavan, but if you have any other questions on that, please ask. Will Juno be on Osmosis? What do you think, Sunny?
I mean, probably. I mean, if it has IBC, anything listing is permissionless, and so I can't imagine people won't bring it over onto Osmosis.
Having talked to the Juno folks, it seems like they're planning to run relayers and are very excited about being on Osmosis. I know that the Juno team really loves the Osmosis project, so that will definitely be the case. I'm also really excited for Juno as well. I think a permissionless smart contracting chain in the Cosmos ecosystem is going to be a huge change. That and Ethermint launching here very soon are going to shake things up in a big way, and I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about it. Brian asks, liquid staking uses bonded LP. Bonded LP is GMM.
Yeah. So yeah, GAMM is, I don't know. It stands for Generalized AMM, so that's the name of our module.
It's a great. I think that's a great module name, by the way. I like the GAM.
Okay, cool. So we have like GAM tokens, which is like the LP shares for each pool, and you'll be able to basically. So what we're actually going to be doing is, the staking module and our LP bonding module. It's called lockup, but we're basically going to be combining these modules where right now the staking module is basically taking custody of the tokens. What we're doing is we're going to modify it where it can take we bond tokens in the lockup module, and then we can use it for those bonded tokens for both LP rewards and for staking rewards at the same time.
And we did chat about this a bit earlier, but I do feel like it's necessary to underlie this point. Why this works is because of first principles of staking. Why are we staking these assets? And it's to prevent certain types of attacks and to prevent people from quickly moving assets from place to place and being able to sort of perform impersonation attacks, basically. Say I actually own a much larger percentage of this network than I really do. And to make undue changes there. And, as long as they're staked somehow or frozen, you could consider those assets as staked. And what liquid staking is going to do is just realize that at a protocol level and treat those assets similarly. I think it's a really cool idea. Promede asks, can we imagine NFT being traded on Osmosis? How do you see Osmosis using NFTs? Hot topic these days.
Yeah, I think NFTs are really cool. I'm waiting for what's going to be the NFT platform of Cosmos. I played around with what's the one on Iris right now? Yeah,
and
there's one
Cyrus.
on Uptick. That's what it's called. So I tried out that. I know the Pylons team is working on stuff, different Pylons than your Pylons, which I guess you've renamed it. But
I'm not Pylons anymore. I'm Strangelove now. And
right.
yeah.
Great name. I love that name. That's really cool.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, so there's a couple of NFT stuff. I'd love to figure out. I think what we need to do is everyone needs to coalesce on creating a cross NFT, an IBC NFT standard. So just
Don't we have that? I thought we have that.
I don't think it's finalized yet. I think I think we need to get everyone all right, this is the final version. Everyone please comply to this.
Hey Billy, get on it. We need our NFT standard yesterday.
But yeah, so once we have NFTs, I'd love to use NFTs on Osmosis. One as sort of a reward mechanism where it's I don't know if you've with the Osmosis airdrop kind of thing. As you know, we'd like to like gamify things a little bit. I'd love to like start using NFTs as badges, where like for completing certain tasks. But then also I'd like to, how do you financialize NFTs? So there's like a lot of stuff happening on Ethereum right now with the fractionalization of NFTs, which I think is really cool because you have these like NFTs that are worth like millions of dollars. So if you tokenize, like fractionalize them, you can put them onto an AMM and you can buy portions of an NFT. And it's like a little bit weird, but I think that's really exciting. And then also there's like, how do you design DeFi primitives that are like, obviously you can't put a full NFT on an AMM because that's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So what can we do instead? Like, what are other? Let's say you don't want to fractionalize auctions. How can you borrow and lend against your NFTs? Things like that. So that I think that's what we're going. I think that's definitely a big thing that's going to need to start happening soon.
Cool. And here's an interesting question. Piki asks, does superfluid staking mean shared security isn't needed?
No, not really, because so superfluid staking is a way of saying that there's a lot of Osmo that's being like used in liquidity pools that could be contributing to the chain security as well. So that's a way of dipping into that. But at the
the one thing that I would say about that, sorry, I just need to stop you there because you said it could be contributing to chain security. I would say one thing that was hard for me to understand, especially when Osmos launches, is it is contributing to chain security. Because it's staked, it actually is contributing to chain security because it is locked up. So what the protocol doesn't acknowledge is that it is contributing to chain security. And I think that's where a lot of confusion is. I know I had confusion there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not rewarding the fact that it's contributing to security, but it is contributing to security by removing it off the market. But at the end of the day, even if we had all of that like liquidity legibly contributed to security, the market cap of Osmo is still like less than a tenth of that of Atoms, right? And so it's like it would still be great to be able to tap into the Cosmos Hub's security mechanism as well, because given the current security of like Osmosis, it's as we get more and more assets, it's harder to we might start pushing up against that security budget right now, and so we want to get but if we have shared security with the Cosmos Hub, we can just like have way more assets on Osmosis.
I also think that in this decentralized world that we're in, where we're all kind of in our own organizations, being able to form these sorts of long-lasting economic bonds between these distinct communities has huge benefits. Like one of the cool things that I've always really liked about Cosmos is we're a really big tent. Kind of anyone can come join. But with that is sort of a looser bonding between some of the parts than you get in other ecosystems that are more centralized. This will allow those sort of stronger, more long-term bonds between large segments of the community to be formalized and continue in ways that were not possible before. And when we talk about the social scalability of these various blockchain primitives, like I think shared security is one of those that you really turned me on to early as something that is going to be critical. Not only for economic reasons, but also for other ones too.
Yeah. And that's one thing people have to remember about shared security, where shared security isn't like an either or. It's not like, oh, we get rid of Osmo staking once we use it. It's like, it's a combination of the two. You're staking Osmo, or you can stake Atoms, and both are contributing to the security of the system. It's cumulative.
Yeah. Here's a fun one. Pramit asks, is it permissionless to list tokens on Osmosis? When can my testnet tokens be listed? And the answer is today. You can go do that today.
Yep. I mean, IBC is permissionless. Creating pools is permissionless. I'd say the only thing that's a little bit less permissionless right now, which is we're working on, is currently asset lists exist on GitHub. And so you'd be able to make a pool with your own tokens. It'll just look really ugly because your token will look like IBC / blah, 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 like some 32-byte string.
64 character hash, yeah.
64 character hash. And so right now, the asset list is the way that front ends know to like, oh, that weird looking string is this nice looking name, if you want to call it test promod chain, right? And that's like that you can do that on the asset list. Currently, we have to go merge that PR, but eventually, this is part of our IBC UX stuff where it's like, I think asset, like we talked about, just ship and iterate over time. Like asset list was like, all right, we need to ship this. Let's put it on GitHub, and then we'll figure out how to move it on chain in the future. And so that's sort of where once we have that on chain, then it'll be even more permissionless.
Yeah, cool. Well, we did go a little over. Thank you for indulging me there, Sunny. I really appreciate it. Do you have any last things to plug or chat about? Where can folks find you on the internet? Yeah.
You can find me on that Twitter handle, Sunny A97. The Osmosis Twitter account is Osmosis Zone. And we're available on Telegram and Discord. I hang out mostly on Telegram, but that's where the more fun conversations happen to be. And then if you want to have some more serious
Telegram. Telegram is the crypto social media. I think I've found out that that's where we all meet. That's where everyone is. That is the case. Also, another random note: I've always pronounced your Twitter handle is Sunya. I don't know why.
You know what I really want to do, actually? I've been talking to Josh about this, where I want to go ahead and actually create a Telegram chat per trading pair on Osmosis, and then embed the Telegram chat on the Osmosis website as a troll box. Remember,
Talk to Sisla. Talk to Sisla. He's got token gated communities, so depending on what's in your wallet or what assets you have staked, you can enter certain Telegram rooms. I've got one for Strange Love that we're going to be launching here in the next month. But yeah, definitely talk to Sisla. He's got all that stuff set up already. Cool. That's an excellent idea. I will be partaking in those. We've got a troll box. Come join the Price Spec channel. Anyway, well, Sunny, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And let's do this again sometime soon. I really want to get Dave on here too, because I want to talk threshold encryption to death.
Have you had Josh on, by the way? He's
I haven't. I hit Josh up and it was right after launch. I should have just waited. And he was like, Jack, I'm sorry. I can't. I'm just too snowed in. And I'm going to have Josh on here too. But Josh is a great interview. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, everyone all around the world. This is, again, we've got Sunny on the East Coast. We got Sisla in India and me on the West Coast. And I see some folks in the chat in Europe. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Thanks again to the sponsors, Sommelier.finance and OmniFlix or network. Sorry. Please go check out both of those things. And everyone, have a great Friday. And see you all next week.